Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of eXhuming the X-Files here on the Outpost Unknown YouTube channel. We're here every Friday talking a new episode, one of the best sci-fi shows ever made and one of our personal favorites. Does it hold up to our childhood memories? Well, hit that like and subscribe. Follow along week to week as we sort of roll through this long television series, and we'll tell you if it held up or not. My name's Matthew. I am joined once again by my friend Jeremy.
Hey, everybody.
And tonight, we're going to be talking episode 9 of Season 2, Firewalker. Mulder and Scully are back together, Skinner has reopened the X-Files, and now we are heading towards a volcano to find a new life form. This was a very exciting episode for me to watch because we had talked previously how it seemed like there was a long gap when Mulder and Scully were sort of separated. Turns out that was a false memory. And so I was like, all right, sweet. What is the first thing they're going to get into? What's the first case they're going to investigate now that Skinner has reopened the X-Files? That's what I was excited for. Were you excited for this one at all?
They weren't gone or separated long enough for me to really, in adulthood care that she was gone that long. It's like, all right, we're just back to it. We're not going to talk about, all the problems that went into, why the X-Files was closed the last time. We're just right back into the swing of things immediately.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
All right. Well, let's chat about Firewalker. Take us through it.
So it begins with some sort of volcano emergency going on at a college in California, where they need to quickly go monitor some robot that they have called Firewalker, which was really kind of cool looking. It never moved or did anything.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. But as far as what they wanted out of, this non-moving robot drone thing that walks into volcanoes, it looked really cool.
It did
had
look
a
cool.
very cool name. They couldn't get control over it. You get the impression that somebody had hacked it and made it walk inside of this volcano. They use this camera to pan around, and they see a dead body, and then they see this shadow kind of looming in the corner, moving around and stuff, but they don't really see it until the camera goes offline.
They're very freaked out. They're like, "What was that?" As a shadow goes by. I remember as a kid, because I remember this episode from when I was a kid, and I remember thinking, oh man, there's a monster down there in the volcano. That's what I thought after this prologue sort of going into it. Spoiler, that's not what it's going to be. Sort of. I mean, it's kind of, I guess.
The shadow. Charged Josh Lyman.
Yeah.
Sort of a monster.
But yeah, it's a cool opening prologue. It reminded me a lot of Ice. And this whole episode reminds me a lot of Ice in terms of what's going on and whatnot. But yeah, it was cool. It was a cool opening prologue, I thought.
Yeah, it was all right. The inside of the volcano, I thought, was the weakest part of it.
Yeah.
It wasn't very clear when they're scooting around with the camera that they're inside a live or active volcano.
At one point, they say in the episode, it's only 130 degrees inside the volcano. And I was like, shouldn't it be hotter than that? It seemed like, you can go to Death Valley and you can get past 130 some days and you can be fine. I felt like it should be a lot hotter inside that volcano than what they said it was.
Sure. Yeah, and I bet if you got really, really close to where the internal part of it is, where the lava is at, it's probably super hot, but
yeah.
I mean, 130 in a cave, that's
true.
124 is what you want to get your prime rib up to cook properly.
I'm no volcanologist, so I will defer to your expertise on this. Okay, 130. I'll roll with it.
Okay, so we what blows my mind about this episode is that they had a couple of really great actors that I'm super fond of. And I don't even know the name of the guy, but Josh Lyman. He was in West Wing, excellent part in it. He was also in Cabin in the Woods, and he was really good in it. And then the guy that he was, I remember him most from Seven, because they made him put on this razor dildo thing.
Yes.
And he acted his ass off in that part, because I was scared for him when he was freaking out. And I'm like, all right, you got these two titans of just great actors, and they just don't utilize them all that well.
There's a bunch of like Shawnee Smith is in this. Shawnee Smith, she's got a horrible haircut. She's got like the worst haircut you could possibly have. Terrible bang, Shawnee. But she plays Amanda in the Saw movies. But old school horror fans like myself will know her most as Meg from the '80s remake of The Blob. So Shawnee Smith is a pretty big horror, scream queen. And then the gosh, what is the guy's name? The guy who plays Tanaka, the Asian guy in this,
Yeah.
is the guy who plays Captain Tanaka in the first season of Altered Carbon. he's
No
in a,
way.
he's in a ton of stuff too. Like the whole cast here of supporting actors have gone on to do bigger things.
Shout out to season 1 of Altered Carbon too.
Oh,
What
it's
an
awesome.
show.
Yeah.
I didn't know. Okay, so Amanda from Saw, that was the girl that had the pig head, right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so
She
she
was
ends up
Jigsaw's
in
apprentice.
and she ends up in Dead by Daylight as one of my favorite killers to play. I did not know the whole time I'm watching this that was her.
Yep, that's her.
So we find out that the team, sorry, Mulder and Scully are talking to this guy that was a part of a government granted team to research volcanoes, and he walked away from it. So he's trying to explain to them why he walked away from the project, who was on the project, what could possibly have gone wrong with it. And they do this video thing where somebody is about to interview Josh Lyman, his character, as he stands next to the Firewalker. And he comes across as the biggest, just douchiest scientist prick I've ever seen. It was all this like idealistic crap and poetic shit. I'm like, oh man, what a fucking weirdo.
He thinks he's the smartest guy in the room for sure. And I love that the
But
guy that they're talking to, because it's weird that they showed up and he's talking to Mulder and Scully. It's strange. He's like, well, it's 20 million tax dollars at stake here. And he's like, I'm kind of afraid to go through proper channels on this one. And it's like, oh, okay. So it just shows that like the reputation of Mulder and Scully is even going beyond like the FBI now. It's completely different. Government agencies know about the weird shit that they investigate, and then they come to them like, hey, can you help me out here on the side?
yeah, on the down low.
Yeah.
So they take a helicopter ride out there. I know, like the filmmaker part of me, the person who has participated in filming movies part of me appreciated that they actually got a helicopter.
Yeah.
They actually rode in the helicopter, but if you watch the helicopter enter, land, and takeoff scene, like they showed every second that they filmed this fucking like we're gonna milk this. It was completely pointless that helicopter was in there for about half the time that it was.
Yeah.
But they had to use every second because they paid for it.
Yeah, it's probably $100,000 just to get that helicopter.
Oh yeah. And so they get dropped off at this place. Immediately, it's kind of a damaged research site. You see damaged satellite dishes, towers, things of that nature. And the guy that they brought with him is like, hey, I need to run around and inventory how much damage has been done here because the government is going to be in my ass.
Yeah.
And, as a kid, I probably looked at that. I was like, that's a really fucking stupid thing to do. As a former government employee, I'm like, your heart is in the right place, brother.
Yeah. That's exactly what someone does. Like, I'm going to get yelled at. I need to. Some bean counter somewhere needs to know what all this is. Yeah. We forgot to mention real quick before we get here. Before they leave, when they're in Mulder's office, whatever, Mulder tries to get Scully to stay behind, and Scully, she looks at him. She's like, I'm ready to work. And I just figured her like in my head. She goes, I'm ready to work, god damn it. And so I just thought it was really, really funny. She's like, I've lost too much time. Because there's been like months. We didn't feel it when we watched the episodes, but months have gone by where Scully was abducted and gone. And so she wants to get back in the saddle because she doesn't want to lose any more time.
And Mulder didn't really try to talk her out of it. He's just like, are you sure? And, respected her character enough to say, or to be, or have enough agency to make that call for
Yeah.
So, respect between the two. So they get dropped off. Old boy goes immediately to run around this site and inventory all of the damage shit. And they're going to go into this little one room shack to investigate what happened to the rest of the team. And it is just like you see this door on like a 4 foot by 4 foot shack. Then they go inside of it, and it's just this huge, huge internal building. Has like a quarantine space, it has separate apartments for where people sleep. Like, there's no way all of this stuff existed inside of this little room, but all right.
I like
And all the lights are off.
Yeah, and getting back to how similar this feels to Ice is when they walk in and they're kind of exploring like the destruction of this base. It's the exact same music that Mark Snow had from Ice. That weird like I don't even know what kind of instrument that is, but they're walking around like this feels the same. And there's that close up shot of that dude with like the axe or whatever, and the light is just hitting his eyes, and the rest of him is in shadow. It reminded me of that thing you were mentioning of how like they've really upped the cinematography this season and really played with shadows and lighting and stuff. And I thought that was an awesome shot of that guy's eyes, just kind of watching him as they walk around.
They stole that, I think, from the Tombs episode too,
Yeah.
because they did that in the second time around, and it just looked so creepy. It's like, you know
Yep.
what? We'll add a little bit of extra sweat. We'll film that, and it'll be even better. So they're walking around this facility. The lights are off, and some things are ruined. They're finding smashed technology here and there, and then all of a sudden, Mulder gets jumped by the guy that he made me fuck her. Like, he comes out of the blue and just beating the shit out of him.
I rewatched that scene in 7 after this episode
Oh,
too because
I
I was like,
should have.
it is so good. I mean, that movie's amazing as it is, but his performance in that is
Scene
so
is intense.
it is because it's just like you feel how fucked up that would make you. Like he has lost it at that point in time, and he is sweating like crazy in that movie. So he's just sweaty all around. But yeah, he's great in that.
I need to find something that he's been in that he took like a lead role in and just watch that. Whether it be television or a movie, I bet as long as the writing wasn't crap, it'd probably be pretty good.
Yeah, he's a good actor.
Okay, so he gets off of him. They find that there's a bunch of survivors that's just been sitting in rooms in complete darkness, hiding from Josh Lyman because he went off of his meds. He apparently is what is it, bipolar,
Yeah.
and he said he went off his meds and just started fucking going ape shit. He killed some other guy, so they've just been hiding in this facility waiting for the cavalry to come, and now the cavalry is there.
He's like Blair from The Thing if Blair was able to get away. I'll kill you. Just shooting everybody. That's what it reminded me of. Blair from The Thing.
And we cut back to the guy doing the inventory outside, and all of a sudden he gets garroted by some wires and a dude breaks his neck. Josh Lyman, he's out there, like half of his face is just charged, like nobody leaves, chokes him, and then breaks his neck with these wires, and then just leaves him there. And you're like, he didn't even do anything.
Yeah.
There was no nefarious stuff. Anyway,
which is also it's also strange because later on I'm jumping a little bit here, but later on his kind of motivation is he doesn't want anybody to leave because he thinks they're all infected, but that guy wasn't infected, and he would know that that guy wasn't infected. So he just straight up murdered that dude.
And he knew him too. Like
Yeah.
they were partners on this project, which was weird later on because Mulder just straight tells Josh Lyman to let him go, and Josh has a gun on him, and it's like, Mulder even less.
Yeah.
You choke that other guy. Like, why would you not hesitate for a moment just to put a bullet in Mulder's chest?
Yeah, and Mulder lets the guy go at the end too, but we'll
Yeah,
get there.
right?
It's weird. It's very weird.
So they find out that the main guy, Josh Lyman, flipped out after getting off his meds, started destroying stuff. Mulder goes over his notes and finds that he has apparently discovered some sort of silicon-based life form inside of the mountain.
Yeah.
or inside of the volcano. And Scully's like, we have sick people here that are heavily traumatized due to this. We need to get them out of there. Like, her concern is getting these people evac as soon as possible and bringing in other teams to worry about Josh Lyman and what actually happened with the murders and shit like that. She's right. Like, Mulder doesn't even seem to fucking care that these people need to leave.
Well, it's kind of weird because if we remember Ice, Scully was the one that was kind of like, "Hey, we got to go into like quarantine procedures here because there's an unknown organism and we can't leave." And they were trying to make sure everybody else doesn't leave. But in this episode, it's kind of weird. The timeline of events, was that before or after they knew there was an organism? Because I feel like they never once really go into the quarantine sort of thing like they did in Ice in this. It's just kind of like, let's get out of here.
They would not have known at the point when, or at this point, when Scully is saying, we need to save lives. We need to PTSD and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the very next scene, the Tanaka, the I wrote down the aggressively sweaty Asian dude starts getting so sick that Mulder agrees to call in a medevac. So they call in a chopper, which of course we never see for the rest of the episode. But they call in the chopper and they put him on a stretcher. They're carrying him out to where the helicopter would normally land, and then the dude just gets up and runs off. Like, he's there's some problem with him where he doesn't want to get evac. He doesn't want to go anywhere. He doesn't trust anybody, so he starts running off blindly into the woods in the middle of the night. He gets chased by he would make me fucker guy and Mulder. He goes tumbling down a hill, and I wrote that the only acting that David Duchovny actually did in this entire episode was when he was seeing the neck bulging stuff. Like, you start seeing this bulging
Yeah.
underneath the skin of Tanaka's neck. Is like, ugh! Like, it's big too.
It's dramatic. Yeah, it's not like a little bulge. It's it's
Like,
a giant bulbous bulge.
it felt, or everything that Mulder did in this episode felt like he just phoned it in, except for both of the times you look at his face during or when it captures him while he's watching this come out of his neck. Like, he's truly horrified at how gross this neck bulge thing is.
I wrote down it's a pretty decent effect. I mean, it looks good, and they use it multiple times because they're like, you know what? Let's just give everybody this weird neck bulge because it's gonna give people the creeping willies when they take a look at it. And it holds up. It's a pretty good effect.
And so they figure out that it's this fungus that had burst forth from Tanaka's chest, and that's what it left sand in his lungs. So that apparently is the end result of being infected by this silicon-based life form.
Yeah. Again, like Scully's talking about spores all over the place. Not a single person wearing a mask in this entire thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Just like, in Ice, they try to they're checking themselves and they're quarantining themselves. Here, they're just kind of like, yeah, spores. Oh, spores.
Well, I mean, she tests them for like a couple hours and finds that if you're not witness to one of these spore bursting events and immediately ingest or inhale these things upon release, that they become a nerd.
Yeah.
But yeah, she probably should have been wearing a mask or a full trash bag during that scene.
It seems like convenient writing. It's like, we have these spores. Oh, well, they go immediately inert after like 5 seconds if you don't inhale them. Little convenient writing there, in my opinion.
Sure. Well, I mean, plot armor is a word that exists.
Yeah.
So we get, Mulder decides that he needs to track down Trebko. What is his name? Yeah, Trebko.
Trepkos.
Or Josh Lyman. And they figure that they're going to go into the volcano lava tubes to track down where the robot was at, where this other body was at. He made me fucker guy was going to go because he mapped it all out, but he's also kind of suspicious, like sketchy.
Yeah.
how he's behaving, like he's gonna do something to Mulder or make him infected or something like that. So they get into the tunnel. They go through a bunch, or they get all the way to where this robot is, and then that guy takes a flare gun to the back, instantly kills him.
That was so funny. I wrote down in my notes where I laughed out loud because I initially wrote like, "Is that a bottle rocket?"
Yeah,
I didn't
because
realize it was.
it looks like a bottle rocket
Yeah.
shooting through the cave, just hits him in the back, or and kills him.
Yeah, and then he pops up later with the flare gun. I was like, "Oh, flare gun. Okay, that makes more sense." But yeah, it looks like phew, bottle rocket straight through.
And he reloads it so fast that he draws it down on Mulder and makes Mulder give up his gun. So
Yeah,
Mulder has this. Well, okay, so no, I have another note here. The neck bulges are the only time Mulder acts, except for that whole scene with Josh Lyman in the cave. Like they played off of each other very, very well. I
yeah.
enjoyed it,
They do this.
and
They do this weird. It felt strange to me because it was like this weird conversation where he tells Mulder like, well, if you found that answer, what would you do with it? Almost like he's trying to connect with Mulder in some way. I don't necessarily feel they pulled that dynamic off, because I don't think they had enough time with
they
the
did.
two of them to really like make that conversation feel meaningful to me.
But if they had let those two characters interact throughout the episode, so they had
Yes.
time to act with each other, that all of it could have been better. And this is going to be a theme in the next couple of episodes that we
Yeah,
record. Is like, man, it just kind of falls short of things that could have been absolutely fantastic.
for sure.
But they go back. Jesse, the woman that he's with, or that Scully is with, is the last female or last person that's alive. Mulder convinces, or just walks away from Josh Lyman with a gun to go save her. Um, Jessie is the name of the character. She handcuffs herself to Scully because something inside of her must be telling her that it's time for this spore thing to burst out of her chest.
Yeah, and we didn't mention like the actual what it looks like. Obviously, we get the bulge, but the actual spore thing that comes out of the throat is like this long, weird, like tentacle looking thing that like sticks straight out. I mean, it's like a foot long coming out of their throat. It looks pretty gross.
Big piece of slimy asparagus is what I had written
Yeah.
down here. And Scully ends up doing the coolest thing that I've seen her do on the
Yes.
show so far. She lays this bitch out and then throws her over her shoulder, like she's handcuffed to her.
Yeah.
She's like, "I'm not gonna get spored. I need to figure this out." So just blast, like decks her, knocks her unconscious, throws her over her shoulder like a fucking sack of potatoes, and starts running up a
Yeah.
staircase. Like, no way.
I wrote that down as well. I wrote Scully just throws that chick over her shoulder, sprints away, and tosses her in a room like a boss, letting her die as the spores blow out of her throat. It looked
Yeah,
awesome too.
it really did.
I wonder.
I was that her? Like,
I was just going to ask you: do you think that was actually Gillian Anderson that threw her over her shoulder and
I
sprinted?
I need to look at that scene again because it didn't. I don't know. She's not a huge girl, but that other girl was also pretty tiny. Maybe she just fucking fuck it.
Yeah, and Gillian Anderson had just given birth, so I don't know. I mean, you don't see her face when she tosses her over the shoulder and runs. So
No, but you see the outline, you see the
yeah,
profile, and it's like that's
yeah,
not a huge person. They
no,
didn't
no,
swap her out for a 6 foot dude wearing her white
yeah.
shirt. Or
It
something.
certainly looks like it could have been Gillian Anderson. So if anyone knows out there, leave a comment. We'd love to know if that was actually Gillian Anderson who did that stunt, because that would be awesome if that was her.
But yeah, she tosses her into a quarantine room, shuts the door with the what is it, the handcuff chain between them, as this spore thing bursts out of her chest so she doesn't get infected.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
then
like this. I like that this was kind of like, the previous scene we had Mulder basically like, you're going to have to kill me. I'm going to go save my friend. And you kind of expect, oh, well, Mulder's going to save her somehow. But this is another instance where the show is like, no, Scully can take care of herself. She's strong. She knows she can. She's smart. She can do all of this herself. And Mulder does not save her. She saves herself.
Yeah. And she does so in the fucking butchest way gone so far in this show. It was so badass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then Mulder busts in at the last second, accomplishes nothing because he didn't save her. Then Josh Lyman shows up and was clearly throughout the episode boning the chick that had the spore problem.
Yeah.
Like the way they described their relationship between them, she was a student of his, and she followed him out there. I was like, yeah, they were screwing.
Yep.
And so he was all sad, like watching her through the window. And then they got into contact with FBI quarantine, and they basically said everybody was dead, even Josh Lyman's character. Just let him go.
Scully is not happy though, because Mulder's on that radio and he's like, "There's only 2 survivors," and Scully gives him that look, and she's like, they're gonna have questions for this guy," and then Mulder does this weird thing where he's like, "He's not gonna say anything," and then just lets him go. I didn't understand that. Did you understand that?
And he he killed people, but he did it for the right reasons.
Not the other dude. Not the friend that he worked. Not the friend that he worked with before. He wasn't infected with the spores. He was just out there trying to take down like how much damage was happening.
Beautiful.
Mulder let a murderer
about that bean counting.
Mulder let a murderer go free. It's weird. I don't get it.
He was all so fucked up. He was all burnt. He's gonna go like, what kind of life was ahead of him?
It is weird because he is completely like charred up on one side. Not what was the last thing we see him? He's taken her body down into the volcano, right?
Yeah.
So is he like just killing himself down with the woman that he loved or something?
Well, he said like the Army Corps of Engineers showed up to quarantine the place, spray it all down, kill everything, and then they do say that they sealed off all of those caves, so it would have been done with explosives from the outside. So yeah, he just went down there to die.
Okay.
Starved to death.
It's very strange, very very weird. A couple other notes that I had was I have this line that Scully says to Mulder that is pretty cool. When she's like, I don't remember the context of what Mulder says to her, but she looks at him and she's like, "I'm back, and I'm not going anywhere." And he's just kind of like, okay. Maybe he was trying to tell her to go back on the corner or the or helicopter or something in that context. And I do like that Trepkos is like burning all the bodies with fungus in them. That was another thing that reminded me of The Thing and ice and whatnot. It's just like, hey, pouring gasoline all over it, and I'll light them up with my bottle rockets or something. burn them all down. So those are my other notes. Did you have any other notes on this episode?
No, I mean, yeah, it was. This was, and you see these episodes. We've talked about it before. That's just kind of a repeat of some other theme that happened in a previous episode that worked well. Maybe it didn't, but this definitely felt a lot like Ice without a lot of the paranoia or good acting. And it kind of sucks because it had good actors in it. They just didn't get utilized as well as they were in Ice.
Yeah, I didn't hate this episode by any means, but I was just kind of like, and I agree with your previous comment 100%. We're going to talk about some episodes coming up, and you're just like, I was more disappointed that they didn't capitalize on the greatness they could have had with it. Because I was like thinking like, oh man, if they would have done this, or oh man, if they would have done that. Like, can you imagine if it had actually been like a silicon-based monster life form or something like that they had to deal with, and then they had to get Trepkos. Trepkos was trying to like, ultimately save everybody and whatnot. That would have been a much cooler thing to me than what they ultimately went with. But yeah, I mean, I didn't hate it. I thought this was just like an okay episode, worth a watch. I think.
Sure. A season 2, winner.
Here, just a few comments on this one that might be of interest that I found. Howard Gordon, who was the writer of this episode, was inspired to write it after seeing 2 news reports about Project Dante, a robotic explorer created by NASA that had been sent into a volcano. And he felt that this episode allowed him to explore the possible results of Mulder's search for the truth, echoing this in the mindset of Daniel Trepkos and the interactions between the 2 characters. Gordon noted that, quote, the natural endpoint of this quest for the truth is madness, unquote, comparing Mulder's treatment of Trepkos with the events of the novel Heart of Darkness. If he was going for that, I didn't feel any of that in the short amount of time they had together. This episode shared themes with previous episodes from the first season, such as Ice and Darkness Falls, which both featured the agents finding new life forms in remote locations. James Wong was somewhat negative concerning the episode's similarities to Ice, saying, quote, if the show starts to cannibalize itself, there's going to be trouble, unquote. Gordon stated, however, quote, I know there are some similarities with Ice, but I think once you get beyond the similarities of a group of people in a confined space going up against a creature, there are enough differences to separate the two, unquote. So let's just unpack that statement from the writer real quick. What would you say are the major differences between this and Ice? Like if you were like have to explain this to someone, like, all right, this is different from Ice in a major way. How?
There wasn't the everybody needs to take care of themselves paranoia, the us versus them sort of shit wasn't as there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with you there, because
But
Ice was all about paranoia. Like even Mulder and Scully don't even trust each other in that, because they think either one of them might be infected, locking Mulder up and stuff like that. So I think you're absolutely correct. I think there's a lack of paranoia in this. Same sort of thing. You still got like a new life form. It's getting under people's skin. This one's bulging. The other one, you could just see it like moving under the skin as it kind of bulges as it moves. Same sort of stuff, but ultimately I think Ice is better than this. Would you say that?
oh, by far. Yeah, far better than this episode.
Okay. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening to our episode on Firewalker. We are going to be back next week, next Friday, as always. We're going to take a look at an episode called Red Museum, written by Chris Carter. So those are always fun whenever Chris Carter gets in and writes one on his typewriter and puts that out. So hit that like and subscribe. I do want to throw out here, to anyone who's listening, we are amassing a little bit of a following here on our show, and we greatly appreciate all the people that are listening. We just a little inside baseball for the listeners out there who are jumping on the show. We record like 4 of these at a time. So, for example, right now we're recording Firewalker, and we have 3 more that we record right after this. And so these episodes that we're actually recording in July aren't going to actually be up on the site until October. So as you guys leave comments and stuff like that, we are reading them, but we won't see them quickly. So if you have something that you want to say about the actual episodes, please send us an email at outpostunknown@gmail.com. We'll get those a lot quicker, and then we can read them on the show and whatnot. But we do appreciate everybody that has been watching. Our latest episode, Erlenmeyer Flask, has like 20 watch hours, and it just came up yesterday. So we've got multiple subscribers from that episode as well. So however people are finding us, we appreciate that you're listening and following along and enjoying the show. Any thoughts on that, Jeremy, as we start to build a small army of special agents following us?
Well, sorry about all the cussing and perversion, but more to come.
Hopefully we don't talk about any more poop down the road. So check back next Friday here on Outpost Unknown as we talk about Red Museum. Catch you then, everybody.